Hi, everybody. Today, we're going to learn what you need if you are training an internal auditor. Now, that may be obvious. Oh, we're going to send them off to internal auditor training. Yeah, that's the first step. It's sort of like I'm going to send you off to driver's ed class, and then you're going to be able to drive a car, right? Well, maybe you'll have to spend a little bit of time behind the wheel before I want you driving my fancy brand new car. So, you need some practical experience, not just education. There are two other things that are really important in any job. And yes, internal auditing for some people is a full-time job. Other people, it's part of their job. Regardless of which, there are two other things that are important. One of those is, do you have the right personality for the job? There are two types of personalities that work fairly well for internal auditors. One is somebody that's very analytical. They don't talk a lot. They listen carefully and they think and they analyze. That person does very well because they ask a question to the auditee and then they analyze the information and they take notes and they think about it and then they ask another question. So that person does very well, especially because they don't talk a lot. Because when you don't talk, the person on the other side of the table, if you're at a table, or if you're standing next to them in a production area, they feel a little uncomfortable when you're silent and they want to fill the empty dead space. So they will answer questions that you didn't even ask. They'll volunteer information. Sometimes it resembles vomiting information that they shouldn't be sharing. So a really good auditor will use silence as an auditing technique when they interview somebody. So the analytical person does very well. The second type of person is somebody more like me that likes to talk, and is everybody like, I want to shake your hand and I want to get to know you. Those kind of people, they do well because they like talking to people so they can get those other people to feel comfortable with them. So I can be sitting in front of the CEO at the closing meeting telling them that they're not going to get their certification. They have a major nonconformity and it's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars. And I can do it with a smile and they still like me when I'm done, most of the time. So those are the two types of people that make good auditors. If you don't have one of those two personalities, it's not that you can't do auditing, but you might find it uncomfortable when you do audits. The person that is the first type, they're comfortable not talking at all. And so that kind of person, they're analytical and they ask smart questions and they listen well and they take notes. That person does a great job of auditing. And the other person, they're very congenial and they like to talk to people and they do well too. There are other personalities that will work, but they don't work as well as those two. The fourth thing you need, so I'll repeat these. Number one, you need some training, some formal training. Number two, you need some practical work experience. Third is you have to have a personality that's going to work for this job. You can't be somebody that is going to go off the handle because the other person is a little bit uncomfortable and you feel uncomfortable even talking to somebody. That's not going to work. There's a fourth thing you need for any job, and that is the right Rolodex. Now, a lot of people that do auditing, they don't realize how important it is who you know. So you have to be very aware of who the people are in the organization, what the organization chart looks like. If you're doing internal audits, not having any awareness of the org chart of your company and who reports to who and who is responsible for the activity, that's dangerous. You can't even really do your job. That's why we have an org chart and we look at that. But if you're doing the internal audit and you work for the company, you should be aware of the unwritten lines that are not on the org chart. Like, this person officially reports to this person that's their boss, but their boss is never in town and they actually report to this other person indirectly, unofficially, dash line. That's important to understand when you're doing internal audits. And if you are not working for the company or somebody like me that comes in, you sometimes don't ask, who is your boss? That's not what you necessarily ask. You say, who reviews this work and signs it? Who makes sure that no mistakes were made? What happens when there is a mistake? Those are indirect questions that get you to the point that you're trying to establish, is who has the ultimate authority for fixing this and approving this if something goes wrong or if something goes right, and you can release the product. So you have to understand that whether you're an outsider that's new to the organization or you're an insider, you can't be oblivious to reporting and responsibilities. That has to be something you understand. Now, it is something you can learn, but you have to learn it. So understanding networking, now you are walking into a situation. It could be your own company or it could be a company you're visiting, but you have to understand how to network. Well, who does that? Write down their name, write down their title. How long have they been here? What is your experience? What is your training? What is your background? Who did you work for before? You're asking a lot of questions, but you're trying to get a little bit of an understanding, like who they are and how they fit in the organization. You don't have to ask all those questions of every single person. The purpose is to understand what that person's role is in the organization, their responsibilities and authorities. So that's very important. The second part of networking is not just understanding that, but sometimes when you are a first-party auditor, which is an internal auditor, or a second-party auditor, which is doing supplier audits, you become extremely valuable when you can say, you might consider calling this person. They might be able to help you. As a third-party auditor for a notified body, you can't do that. You can't offer advice or help. As an FDA inspector, you can't do that either. Sometimes the third-party auditors cheat a little bit and they'll give you 3 names and they'll say they're not giving advice or consulting, but they just gave you 3 names and they wink, wink, nod, nod. This is the one I would call first. They won't do it when they're being observed by somebody like MHRA or somebody like that, but they will give you some help every once in a while when they're not supposed to. But it is really valuable and completely allowed to give advice when you are a first-party auditor doing internal audits or you're a second-party auditor doing supplier audits. So come armed with a Rolodex. You become more valuable as an auditor when you get to know people. So what I did that probably people don't realize how instrumental it was in the success of me as an auditor and as a consultant. Every single time I went on an audit, I gathered business cards. I connected with those people on LinkedIn. And this is when LinkedIn was a new thing. And I followed up with them by email and I put their number in my phone. So I have no idea how many phone numbers are on this phone, but I guarantee you it's way over 1,000. So I have people calling me all the time, like it comes up like George, because at one time I wasn't smart enough to put in the last name or where I knew them from. Over time, I learned, let's put in a little bit more information so when the phone rings, I know who I'm answering and I can put 2 and 2 together. Like, okay, this is George Smith, and George Smith is a supply chain manager at this company. Okay, now I got it in my head what George does, what his reporting relationships with. Oh, George, you're still at that company. What can I help you with? Oh, you had mentioned a company that does contract sterilization, and I was wondering if you give me their name because we're having problems with our sterilizer. They were shut down. Now you're their savior. You just gave them a name. So as an auditor, you want an auditor that has a really good Rolodex that can bail you out, which is one of the advantages of hiring an outside consultant instead of having an internal person. They're there not just give you a piece of paper, an audit report, but they're also there to give you advice that'll improve your quality system. That's the value add of an auditor. So if you're an auditor and you don't have a good Rolodex, that's a weakness you need to overcome, and you need to learn how to network and build that Rolodex and not just drop names, but recommend, hey, I recommend you call this person. They're a really good company and they do a really good job. I've audited them and I was impressed by their operation. They're going to hire that company. And I've done that for a lot of companies out there. Like this printed circuit board company, I wouldn't recommend them. I can't tell you anything more. I just wouldn't recommend them. That's fair. You haven't dropped any non-disclosure agreements have been broken. No, you're good. You've just said you wouldn't recommend them. You're fine. But if you did an audit of them and it was a really good outcome, I can't tell you all the details, but I've been there, I've audited them, and they had an excellent audit. That's fair. You haven't disclosed any other information. You didn't even say who you audited them for. So hiring outside auditors can be very powerful if you need advice. And sometimes you don't even know you needed the advice. So the Rolodex is key. Having the right personality for the job. Like sometimes like the client will ask me a question and I'm very quick to answer. But sometimes the analytical person will do a better job than I will. Matthew's famous for that. Matthew Walker in our company, you ask him a question and he'll think about it and he'll research it, and his answers often come back better than mine. And I'm really impressed by that. But that's the analytical mind. Me, I'm quick. I'll come up with an answer for you out of experience. Matthew will do his homework. A combination of those two is really valuable. Remember, I said you need practical experience and you need an auditing course. Because we are working on our lead auditor course and we're going to be offering and launching it December of this year, it would be a little self-serving. You can just go to our website and type in lead auditor training and it will come right up and you will see the page. And I think actually the slug is lead-auditor-training. So that's where that is. That course is better than every other one that I've done in the past. And this will be the 4th lead auditor course I've created from scratch. But the practical part is a key piece. You need to have a practical part. Now, one of the things we do in a lead auditor course, sometimes there's a role playing. We'll say, okay, pretend you're doing an opening meeting, plan your opening meeting, and I'll pretend I'm the auditee, and I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to present these bad findings to me that I'm not going to be so happy about, and I'm going to ask questions, and we'll see how you do in your opening meeting or closing meeting, whatever it is. So that's role playing. It gives you experience doing that. Will your first opening meeting you ever do go well? No. Will the second one? Probably not. Probably not even the 3rd or the 4th. Somewhere around the 20th one, you're going to be pretty solid. But will you continue to improve? If you practice and you plan ahead and you think about one thing that you can improve each time you do it, you will get better. That's what practice is. You have to pick something specific to try to improve and then reflect on that or ask a third party, an independent person, to give you feedback on it. Maybe somebody from your team. Maybe you're doing a team audit and there's a more experienced auditor that can give you feedback. Maybe you're just doing an audit with a team and like, did I forget anything? So make sure you've identified something you want to improve and concentrate on that and get feedback. That's true for anything. Driving a car, learning how to play tennis, whatever it is, you want to learn how to putt better, work on one thing in your putting you want to work on and ask somebody for feedback. It works for everything. It's called practice. But there's this beautiful thing that we've created since COVID, and our company was doing it way before COVID, but everybody in the world now does everything on Zoom. Like right now we're doing this on StreamYard. It's just another teleconferencing platform. This allows us to live stream. But when you have a platform that allows you to record and share things digitally in 4K, that's fantastic. Now you have a recording of what you did in your opening meeting. Now you have a recording of what you did in your closing meeting, and you can show that to another person. If I'm sitting next to you in the opening and the closing meeting, I'm listening to you, I'm watching the client, I'm paying attention to the content. I got a million things going through my head all at once. So my feedback is useful, but not as good as it could be. But if you give me a recording of your opening or closing meeting, now I can give you much more useful feedback on your opening and closing technique, and I can give you a lot of suggestions instead of just a few. It's just because I can focus on just you, and I'm not distracted by anything else because the audit's already done. I'm not involved in it. I'm just watching the video. I can tell how the room's playing. I can, it's not as good as being there. Being there is always better, but I can watch it over and over again, and that more than compensates for the lack of me being there. So watching a video, listening to what is said, what people, sometimes there's some nonverbal sounds that you hear, grunts, groans, sighs. Their body language you can definitely pick up on. That's something Matthew is really good at, and I'm really poor at. So body language is something you can focus on and learn more about and read about it online. But recording will allow you to say, oh, I should have caught that person was getting angry. And you should have done something about it, shouldn't you? That person there, I talked and talked and talked. They didn't understand anything what I'm saying. It's like a deer in the headlights the whole time. I should have paused and said, it looks like you have a question. Is there something that I can clarify for you? That would have been an awesome thing to say to that person that has that deer in the headlights. So now that we have the ability to record meetings, my recommendation, especially when you're doing an internal audit, but even for the supplier audits, ask if you can schedule a Zoom session in case somebody that's not there wants to see it. That's what you're telling everybody. And that's a really great, honest reason for doing it. But there's also this other reason. It's so I can improve my auditing skills by going back and watching it and see what kind of things I need to improve. You could share that with people. They're not going to complain that you're trying to improve. Are you crazy? Particularly on an internal audit. Like, I would like to record this in a Zoom session just so I can refer back to it and improve my technique. And if you have any questions when you're writing your capital plans, I can go back and I can watch that and I can refresh my memory. Another thing, because you're going to mostly talk about the audit findings, the good things, the bad things, the OFIs. You're going to talk about those in that closing meeting. People are going to ask you questions. You can go back and watch the video and you'll be right back where you were in that meeting, and you can give them the best possible advice on how to tweak their corrective action plans before they implement them. And I have a lot of clients come back to me and ask for feedback on their corrective action plans, but I often don't have a video to refresh my memory. So I have to go back to the report, and that's not anywhere near as good as a video. So think of all the benefits you can get from that video. And it doesn't just have to be for the opening and closing meeting, but those are obvious ones. Other places you go, like, I really struggle a lot with design controls. Could we record the interview of design controls so I can go back and look at it and learn from it what I did well and what I did poorly, and I can show it to an expert like Rob or Matthew, and they can give me some pointers on how to do this better. If it was recorded as a video, we can do that for you. It also can be used when you have somebody that's in training. We normally say it's not okay to have that person go audit that process if they are not fully qualified. If they're still in training, they have to be shadowed by another lead auditor that is experienced and has all the qualifications. But there is a little wiggle room there. If you're doing an internal audit or supplier audit and you don't finish the audit right away, and you give another person that is experienced an opportunity to look at the video for some of the things, you might be able to go back and say, you missed this. Let's go back and ask for that before we issue the audit findings and audit report, before we do the closing meeting. So that's actually how it works for third-party auditors. When I was learning how to audit, I would create an audit agenda. The person that was training me would ask me for a copy of that, and they would give me feedback on it, and I would revise it. They'd look at it again and say, now it's okay, now you can send it. So before I shipped to the customer, they tweaked it and made it better. So it's officially theirs, but I did all the work and I made the mistakes and I learned from them. Then when I did the opening meeting, same thing. I did the opening meeting, and then my job was to turn to the person that was the actual lead, because I was only acting lead, and I would say, is there anything I forgot? And they're like, yep, you forgot this and this and this. I'm like, I had a checklist. How did I screw that up? And then when you're auditing, they observe you in different areas. and they give you pointers. Look, I would finish the area on, let's say, receiving inspection. I would say, okay, I think we're done. Is there anything I forgot? And he's like, yep. I was like, I thought so. What did I forget? And he's like, did you ask any questions about calibrated equipment? I'm like, nope, didn't. Did you ask about sampling plans and statistical sampling? Nope, didn't do that. Did you ask about where things get placed when they're done in doing the inspection and how they identify the status? Nope, didn't ask those either. He's like, well, you have some more work to do. So that's how I learned. I made mistakes. Same thing when you're driving the car. Oops, I didn't quite make the turn correctly at the right time when I was trying to parallel park. Let me do that again. So you pull back out and you try again. And then you pull back out and try again. You make mistakes and you learn, and you have somebody experienced sitting next to you. With a video, they don't have to be sitting next to you. They can watch it asynchronously at another time and give you feedback, and they can catch things that were a moment in time. A body language, a frown, a shrug, a deer in the headlights look, or maybe an audit trail that you didn't follow. Like, oh, in the background there, I see a piece of calibrated equipment, and you didn't have any calibrated equipment in that area of the audit. That would have been an opportunity to follow that. Or that person didn't really understand the process and couldn't describe it very well and seemed to be floundering a little bit when they tried to describe what they did to you. And they had to go back to the instructions. They might have just been nervous, but check their training records. Maybe they haven't been trained properly on this. Maybe they weren't trained to the current version. Who knows? So just because the shadow, your experienced guru, is not sitting next to you, doesn't mean you can't have one. You could have it sent, have the video sent to them, get that feedback, and have a Zoom call with them, and they can pause the video. Say, see this second of the video? See what I see in the background? And you can ask them, what do you see there? Instead of showing them, get them to the right moment in time. Say, what do you see that I see that you forgot or missed out on? An opportunity that was missed. That's really valuable. So we want to try to get people in the concept of, if you're going to do remote training that's on demand and it's all going to be on Zoom or some other teleconferencing platform that people are using for courses, you have to have some mechanism for getting the practical feedback after you've taken the course as you practice this stuff. And it's going to take several audits of several different types before you nail it down. And that's essential to going from trainee that passed a quiz or exam to trainee that has successfully executed an opening meeting, a closing meeting, planned the agenda, written the report, and managed the team, which is the job description for a lead auditor. So that's what you need if you want to be a lead auditor. It's not just you have to take this course and you have to be observed 3 times. You've got to add more detail there. What is the right personality for this job? Let's recruit somebody that has that skill. What is the Rolodex of this person? Let's make sure our auditing team builds that Rolodex over time as an asset that they have that makes them better auditors. Let's make sure they're observed by experts so they can continue to improve and hone their skills. And that's the secret to becoming good at anything, but especially this very difficult skill of sitting in front of somebody and auditing them. You know, it's an uncomfortable situation. It's very technically challenging with a lot of interdisciplinary things to learn that aren't necessarily your expertise, and you're going to have to practice it many, many times. I hope this was helpful to you. Please put comments below on what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you think we ought to do next time. But next week, I have an awesome one that was one of the comments that we had in previous weeks. It was about recalls. They said, there are so many recalls. How can we prevent them? So that's what we're going to cover next Friday. And I have got the answer for you. So check it out. See you next Friday, 12:30. Bye-bye.